working with them, and I'm going to be very interested in your talk here.
Thank you, and thanks for the segue, Alistair, about the different fertility in different parts of the landscape. So I'm going to talk about a similar thing, but using a model called My Pasture Planner, which is a which is a nitrogen planning tool we've got to look at how better to utilise our nitrogen within the landscape on your farm. And one of the keys to that, as I'll talk about shortly, is that we know the total soil N content of the different soil types within your farm varies as well, and that's what the whole principle of My Pasture Planner is based on. Unlike Alistair, I'll be thanking my contributors at the end rather than the beginning. Although I do have a little logo there from MPI, who was part of the funding. This is through our PGP funding that we developed a lot of this. So as I said, My Pasture Planner is a nitrogen planning tool developed to optimise the nitrogen use within the farm system and increase that end use and efficiency. How does it work? It's based on the total N test of the soil. We know that that can vary quite widely, from around 0.3, 0.4 up to 1.2-ish or more on very high fertility soils. What we did was we worked with AgResearch, and they had run a lot of trials throughout the country looking at response to applied nitrogen at various levels of total nitrogen in the soil. And the stylised graph was actually from real data, I haven't just made it up, showed quite clearly that the lower your total N content of the soil, the greater the response, or the greater the past response to each kilogram of nitrogen that you've applied, compared to at the higher total N content of that soil. So you're getting that big difference there, and that's what we based the whole model off. AgResearch not only developed the research, but they also helped us develop all the algorithms and the initial desktop model in the background. Key features is that My Pasture Planner optimises that amount, timing and placement of nitrogen fertiliser applications, and as I said, based on that total soil N level. It's was initially came out, as some farmers may remember, N Guru came out, which is a one-off, repeated each time for each different part of the farm system. But this has become more geospatial and at least on a block basis, but you can block your farm up as much as you like. And that then is used to develop that annual nitrogen plan. And it can be optimised running with two model options to either optimise, match the animal feed demand where those deficits occur, or use a total nitrogen budget just to essentially get the model to say where to put nitrogen to grow as much pasture as you can, when and where. And it ensures better planning and application and reporting of that nitrogen use. What do we need? Unfortunately, you need a MyBallance account, and to do that you have to become a shareholder of the company. And you need those digital maps. There's that naughty map word again. But we can read in most map formats into our MyBallance and get them into My Pasture Planner. You need these monthly pasture growth rates, and that's without nitrogen having been applied. And thanks to Dairy NZ or your predecessors, there's a lot of those out there for dairy farms, but not so many for hill country sheep and beef properties. You can use those defaults that are available, we've got them in the model, or you can use your own if you do have that data. And a couple of sheep and beef properties down the east coast have supplied some data there. And you need a recent non-transparent overseer FM nutrient budget. And that's read in through one of those expensive APIs. And of course that total soil N test for the management block. And to run some financial comparisons between what the farmer has been doing and what the model is determining, we need the amount of nitrogen used either last year or an average of years or typical nitrogen applications that you may use. So what does it tell us? It tells us when, where and how much nitrogen to apply. And it's like the graphic at the bottom, but it doesn't tell you the product, because that's a decision you make with your farm consultant and what is best used for you at that time of year. You may want sulphur, you may want ammo, you may want some elemental sulphur in there, so you may use one of our products phased in or something similar, or you may want to apply it with your spring nitrogen, so you might apply DAP. And it, as I said, compared to last year's in applications. It can also sort of identify, not as graphically as Farmax does, but where there's a farm deficit in meeting feed demand and actual animal and what we can grow with that nitrogen. It can be helped to maximise your pasture grown, and we can get that estimate of net return on N applied. If we look at this graph, this is one we've been running. Have we got plenty of time left?
4 minutes.
Oh, yep, that's cool. That's cool up. We get two different graphs out of this model initially, and this is the fit to feed demand. The blue bars at the bottom there, they are the pasture growth rate from the farm without having nitrogen applied. The grey bars are what the total dry matter grown with the nitrogen applied from last year, or your average, and the black bars are where the model's applying nitrogen to grow more feed. In this case, we've got a big gap around in the December through to March period there, and that's because, in this case, the farmer only wanted to apply nitrogen in April and August. Okay, so we've run the model there to do that. The yellow line or orange line, however you visualise that, is the total animal feed demand. And the gaps we see between the blue bars or the black bars, if they didn't meet, is where we may need to apply supplement to match that demand. Up the top, we'll see we've got some numbers up the top. We've got the total nitrogen used per year, which is way less than last year, but that's because we're constricting it to those 2 months. And then we go through total feed grown, which is different, and in response efficiencies, and right through to a net return on N applied, which has decreased quite a bit because we're 2 reasons. One, we're using a lot less nitrogen because we're only trying to target those 2 months, and also we're actually applying it at a lower growth response rate, but forcibly doing that there. The next option was, as I said, there's another option just to go away and grow as much feed as you can model with the nitrogen applied. We gave it 120 kilos of N per hectare per year on average over the farm, and it applied it, as you would think, in those months of September through to November when pasture growth rates are highest. In the background, what the model's doing is it's going away and looking at the total N of each of the management blocks on farm and the area of the management blocks, and it's trying to move that nitrogen around to get as much as it can in pasture grown out of that model. And I'll tell you now, show you there now, there's 4 other pages. I've just focused on the pasture feed budget page, but there's a nitrogen response page looking at the nitrogen response that you're getting within each month, cost of feed grown in each month, and net additional return on nitrogen applied as well. So those are in there, but I haven't focused on them today. And here, as we look across, we'll see the numbers are quite different. We're getting a very good return on cost of feed grown, and but all that nitrogen's grown in those high growth months, and a massive increase in potential net return on N invested. The third thing I did was I took the 2 graphs, or the 2 model options there, and combined them into one. And on the farm, so we've got the same amount grown in April and in August there. And in September, the farmers wanted to apply 25 kilos of N per hectare across the whole farm because in October they were taking out a chunk of land for growing some fodder crops. So they wanted to get those pasture covers up. So we forced the model to do that as well, and then let it go and do its own thing to just grow as much pasture as it could with the remaining nitrogen. At the bottom there, and I've got this table up to show you really how it spatially distributes that nitrogen, and this would have also appeared with those numbers on for those other 2 graphs, but we just didn't choose to show those. We'll see in August, It's been variable rates of nitrogen recommended by the model for each of the blocks, with the highest rates going on interestingly, block 6, the effluent block, which has interestingly had the lowest total N, but that was a relatively new effluent block on this farm. And on the higher total N blocks, it tends not to apply that nitrogen there. But sometimes it depends on how much area that each of those blocks are and how much nitrogen it's got left to use. There's some other constraints we can set in there about how much we can apply on each block and within each month as well. So you can set constraints there. Anything else to show? Yep. I think that's about it there. So, you know, sort of this has been moved out in the last 12 months out to farmers, and it's slow to get traction because new technology's coming along. So if anybody can help us find ways, Graham, of getting farmers to uptake information and be more receptive, that would be great. We feel that what we've shown here, we can grow more grass on farm using less nitrogen in a lot of situations, or the same amount with less nitrogen. So it's really been really good outcomes from that. So the key points: grow more pasture for the same amount of N applied, or grow the same for less N applied. In a lot of cases, it can identify and meet those feed demands and increase your nitrogen sufficiency and decrease N inputs. And we can also, we're going to add this year a functionality to be able to meet that N cap within the model. At the moment, the model doesn't meet the N cap, so we're going to have that be able to be entered in at the block level and as an editable amount. And it's free to all Ballance shareholders. Tom Buckley from our farm gave this quote: "My Pasture Planner allows us to create a customised annual nitrogen plan using the latest science." But with all models, as we know, seasons change, so we need to be flexible with what we're doing and have that great discussion with your consultant. And thanks to all those who put into that MPI ag research and the farmers who tested it on. And if you want more information out there, farmers, just give your Ballance nutrient specialist a ring and they can help you out. Thank you.